following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or another print disability that makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publisher. For more information, just visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org. Welcome to you, the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We now present a reading of articles and features from the USA Today for Tuesday, February the 17th of 2026. And your readers today are Jody
and Alan Blackburn.
And I'm going to start you out on our front page. My first article is Interest in State Laws Over ICE Rises. Block or help? That depends on the party in charge. State lawmakers across the country are ramping up efforts to either support or block the Trump administration's mass deportation efforts, wading deeper into the policy arena that's long been the province of the federal government. Now, while immigration enforcement is a federal power, states have many opportunities to either smooth the way or throw up roadblocks, particularly when it comes to being a sanctuary jurisdiction. Lawmakers from across the political spectrum said the attention focused on immigration by President Donald Trump and then being executed by Immigration and Customs Enforcement officers, it has created a significant appetite for state level action. In Republican-led states, White House officials have been working with legislative leaders to target sanctuary jurisdictions where local police won't cooperate with the immigration officials. They are also pushing state lawmakers to expand the 287G programs, allowing local police to take on limited immigration enforcement authority and requiring local sheriffs to hold on to suspected unauthorized immigrants until immigration enforcers can collect them from jail. Republican states are collaborating. In Tennessee, Republican leaders have worked with the White House to craft a package of bills aimed at cutting off any state spending on unauthorized residents, in part by creating immigration checks for public school children. Under federal law, all children in the U.S. are entitled to a free public education, and migrant rights groups say the efforts to track citizenship, it might scare some immigrant children into staying at home. Now, the plans would also permit state and local police to detain truckers who cannot immediately prove their lawful status and then stop offering driver's license tests in any language but English. Democratic states, they push back. In California, Democrats have proposed laws barring immigration officials from using state property, making it easier for people to sue the federal immigration officers and even blocking car rental companies from renting vehicles to immigration and custom enforcement officers. Now, in Oregon, Democratic lawmakers are considering plans to withhold state grants or contracts with private companies who assist ICE and are clarifying that the state will withhold tax payments to the federal government if the White House blocks federal funding to the state over its refusal to comply with Trump's demands. In Colorado, Democrats who control the state house are considering a raft of bills to restrict operations by ICE officials, including further limiting information sharing by state and local governments and barring enforcement at sensitive locations, which would be like hospitals. Zokai is drafting legislation that would ban ICE officers from ever becoming local or state police officers. She says she's been consulting with fellow legislative Democrats in other states to prepare model legislation in much the same way that the White House has been working with the Republicans. Now, in any other year, such sweeping changes, they wouldn't have a chance of passing the state legislature, she said. But people are upset by what they see as overreach by Trump's immigration office enforcers. The state has immense power to take a stand against federal government and to protect our constituents from the federal government, she said. And it is because we have that power that Trump threatens to retaliate against us.
Scientists ponder murder by frog toxin. Russian opposition leader's death is reviewed. A joint report alleging that a poison dart frog toxin has been linked to the death of Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny rippled quickly around the globe among scientists. The allegations raised fresh questions about the circumstances of Navalny's 2024 death and about the origin of a highly unusual toxin. Poison dart frog species have long fascinated researchers and the public, partly because of their diminutive size and striking color patterns, and also because of the stories surrounding the deadly toxins found on their bodies. Indigenous hunters, for example, use one type of dart frog poison on the tips of their arrows, But the toxin reportedly identified in this case, epibetadine, isn't known to have been known to be used to kill anyone. Hal Summers, an emeritus biology professor at East Carolina University, said. The report released on February 14th by the United Kingdom, Germany, France, Sweden, and the Netherlands stated that governments were confident Navalny was poisoned based on traces of epibetadine found in his body. Navalny, an attorney who had been imprisoned in Siberia when he died. The report noted the toxin is only found naturally in poison dart frogs in South America, not Russia. The governments didn't release toxicology reports, and the Russian government denied the allegation. Epibetadine intrigued researchers for decades. It was once highly sought after as a potential analgesic, many times more powerful than morphine. It may be possible that a chemical laboratory thousands of miles from a tropical rainforest could have artificially reproduced the toxin, but many questions remain. John Daly, a biological chemist at the National Institutes of Health, pioneered research on dart frogs over decades, tracing the origin of their poisons to their diets. According to Joe Schwartz, director of McGill University Office for Science and Society, enzymes in the frogs' bodies turn to alkaloids in ants, small beetles, millipedes, and mites into toxins. Schwartz wrote in an article, Daly identified epibetadine in a poison frog in Ecuador called Epibetades tricolor. At first, the researchers had high hopes for the poison. Although it's extremely toxic, they found it had a painkilling effect 200 times more potent than morphine and might not be linked to addiction. The idea that epibetadine could be a potentially useful pharmacological tool as a painkiller really stimulated a lot of interest and motivation. Ultimately, it could be incredibly profitable if they can make it work as a painkiller. Scientists were able to decode the toxin and chemically reproduce it, but they found the difference between a beneficial dose and a deadly dose was too narrow to be viable. Could deadly toxin reportedly found in Navalny be man-made? Summers noted that the statement from the governments does not make clear Navalny's cause of death, but it's remarkable if they were able to identify the epibetadine in samples from his body. It would be unprecedented if Navalny's death is attributed to the epibetadine toxin. Although some indigenous tribes in rainforests were said to have used batrachotoxin from dart frogs for hunting, scientists haven't found any evidence that epibetadine was ever used for that purpose. The batrachotoxin was the only frog toxin well known to be used by humans, and it was used by the indigenous Americans in some parts of Colombia. It would be very surprising if anyone tried to use the product as an experimental chemical to poison someone, Summers said. The statement from the United Kingdom and other governments said they informed the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons of their findings that could indicate a violation of the Biological and Toxin Weapons Convention. It also stated that the findings raised concerns that Russia had not destroyed all of its chemical weapons. What to know about the colorful frog species? Found in tropical rainforests in South America, the frogs face risk from habitat destruction and the exotic pet trade. More than 175 species have been identified, and dart frogs in captivity aren't generally toxic because they aren't fed the same diet as frogs in the wild. Colorful patterns on the frogs warn predators of danger, and they advertise the toxins so that predators know how to avoid them. And the frogs have evolved to be resistant to the toxin.
A squeaker or a tsunami? 3 numbers could hold key to the midterm elections. Big numbers and high stakes are riding on the ballot in November. 435 House seats, 35 Senate seats, 39 governorships, and the country's course for the final 2 years of President Donald Trump's term. So who will win? In the math of the midterms, a handful of statistics can signal the odds of a squeaker or a tsunami, of a Democratic sweep, or the resilience of the Republican status quo. If we lose the midterms, we'll lose so many of the things that we're talking about, so many of the assets that we're talking about, so many of the tax cuts we're talking about, and that would lead to very bad things. Trump told his supporters at a rally in Iowa that kicked off his election year campaigning. We have got to win the midterms. Now contrast the president's warning with the confidence of House Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries of New York. We only need to get 3 seats, he told reporters on Capitol Hill. It's happening. Democrats are going to take back control of the House, and the only question is, what's the margin? Start with Trump's approval, 36%. That was president's rating in the Associated Press survey taken February 5th to 8th, the latest of the public polls that are considered most credible. The tepid measure of his political temperature was consistent with other respected pollsters, including a 37% approval rating in the Quinnipiac University poll, January 29th to February 2nd, and then there was a 36% rating in the Gallup poll in December. That level of support, if it persists, would be a 7-decade low for a president at a midterm, and it's a red alarm for the GOP. Trump won't be on the ballot, of course, but the president's popularity, it has consistently forecast how his party's candidates are going to fare. Now, some of the GOP representatives, they see their own peril ahead. 30 of them have already announced that they won't run for re-election. Some are going to retire, and others to run for other offices. Now, that's 14% of the GOP caucus, with more likely to follow. Now, in comparison, 21 Democrats have said they will not run again. Since World War II, the president's party has lost an average of 25 seats in the midterms. Only twice has the party in power gained ground. That was in 1998 and 2002. In both cases, the president's approval rating was soaring up into the 60s. Watch economic angst, 57.3. That's the preliminary read for February from the University of Michigan's authoritative Consumer Sentiment Survey. The benchmark of how consumers are feeling, it has sunk 20% since Trump took office again a year ago for the second time, reflecting continued concern about the economy now and pessimism about what's ahead. Nearly 3 of 4 Americans now describe economic conditions as only fair or poor. Assessments of Trump's handling of the economy, once it was a strength, that's now a liability. Disapproval has hit a 59% record in an NPR/PBS News Marist poll that was taken in January. Most have said Trump's signature tariffs, they have hurt. Now, Trump has mocked the issue of affordability as a Democratic hoax and a con job. Some anxious Republicans have urged him to show more public displays, though, of empathy. MAGA money, $304 million. For the GOP, cold cash is an encouraging number in a disparaging year. Now, begin with the basics. The Republican National Committee reported having $95 million in the bank in January, while the Democratic National Committee now owes more money in loans than it even has in the bank. The main GOP super PAC for Senate races, the Republican State Senate Leadership Fund, it has $100 million. Now, that's close to triple the $36 million that's reported by the Democrats' Senate Majority PAC. Now, looming over all of that is MAGA, Inc., the leading pro-Trump super PAC with its stunning $304 million on hand. There is no clear Democratic counterpart to that. I'm pleased to report that I have raised, since the great presidential election of 24 in various forms and political entities, in excess of $1.5 billion, Trump announced without details in an after-midnight post on Truth Social last August. Now, that immense war chest would be especially remarkable amassed by a lame duck president. In the past, Trump hasn't always been willing to spend his money on other people's races, though. In the midterms during his first White House term, back in 2018, his Super PAC America First action, it spent less than $30 million. This time, he may want to save his financial firepower to play a role in the 2028 presidential election. But he could choose to deploy millions of dollars to defend vulnerable Republican incumbents, attack promising Democratic challengers, and finance ads that promote his leadership and warn of disastrous consequences if his opponents prevail. Would that be enough to counter his sagging approval and his voters' economic angst? Well, we may be about to find out.
You're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 12:14. A photography firm responds to concerns over the Epstein files. LifeTouch parent firm's ex-CEO is mentioned. Widespread concern that school photography company LifeTouch appears in the Department of Justice's files on Jeffrey Epstein's have sparked viral social media posts in school districts around the country responding to upset parents, but the company is refuting the claims. LifeTouch is not named in the Epstein files. The documents contain no allegations that LifeTouch itself was involved in or that student photos were used in any illicit activities, LifeTouch said in a statement on its website and posted on social media February 10th. Still, worries about LifeTouch being named in the Epstein files have spread rampantly on social media. One content creator posted an Instagram reel on February 12th warning parents about schools that use the company and advising them to opt out their kids from the photos. And it has had 39,000 views to date. On X, in a post with more than 100,000 views, a user reiterated the claim that the company is in the files and wrote, "They keep a database of all the digital photos of kids and their personal info." The discussion appears to stem from the ownership of LifeTouch's parent company, Shutterfly, which is owned by a private equity firm, Apollo Global Management. Leon Black, the former CEO of Apollo Global Management, is named in the Epstein files. And here's what to know about the link among LifeTouch, Apollo Global Management, Black, and Epstein. Is LifeTouch in the Epstein files? Ties to Leon Black are explained. LifeTouch said it is not named in the Epstein files. The firm has emphasized student privacy and amid rumors about ties to the convicted sex offender. When LifeTouch photographers take your student's picture, that image is safeguarded for families and schools only, with no exceptions, LifeTouch said in a statement addressed from current CEO Ken Murphy. The connection between LifeTouch and the Epstein files ties to Black, a billionaire and former CEO of Apollo Global Management, which owns LifeTouch's parent company, Shutterfly. Apollo Global Management was not linked to Shutterfly, and therefore LifeTouch until acquired Shutterfly in September of 2019, 1 month after Epstein's death. Email shows Epstein's associates arranging meetings between him and Black from 2010 to 2017. Black also is mentioned in an email thread between FBI employees. The email says someone stated Epstein told her to give Black a massage while Black was naked, and that someone stated another female gave Black a massage and made her perform oral sex. The names of the accuser or accusers are redacted. Susan Estrich, Black's lawyer, previously denied any wrongdoing in a statement to USA Today. Mr. Black asked for an independent investigation of his relationship with Epstein. The Detchert law firm investigated and reviewed more than 60,000 documents, interviewed more than 20 people, and concluded that Mr. Black paid Epstein for estate planning and tax advice, and they had no awareness of Epstein's criminal activities. Black left Apollo Global Management in March 2021 amid increased scrutiny about his relationship with Epstein. The USA Today reached out to Apollo Global Management for comment. As parents raised concern about LifeTouch's possible connection to Epstein, several school districts around the country responded to the rumors. Prescott Valley Charter School in Arizona said it canceled picture days out of an abundance of caution. While we do not have any information indicating a direct impact on our school or our students, our highest responsibility is always the safety, security, and trust of our families. In Salinas, California, Monica Anzo, a superintendent of the Aliso Union School District, addressed unfounded rumors that LifeTouch had shared photos with unauthorized third parties without consent for nefarious purposes. The safety and security of our children is the district's most important concern, and we want to reassure you as we verify our third-party vendors adhere to the same standards, said Anzo, who shared LifeTouch's statement. Anna Cutaya, superintendent of the Milford Public Schools in Milford, Connecticut, also issued a letter sharing LifeTouch's statement. We are writing to address recent media reports regarding the release of the Epstein investigation files and separate allegations involving the leadership of LifeTouch, commonly used for school pictures. We understand these headlines are concerning, and we want to provide clarity for our families. And what is LifeTouch? Well, LifeTouch is an 80-year-old photography company headquartered out of Eden Prairie, Minnesota. And the company is well known for its footprint across the country in capturing school photos from preschool through high school, as well as for other school-related activities. According to the company's timeline, Shutterfly purchased LifeTouch in 2018.
And Cuban Cigar Festival is postponed. Economic situation fuels the crisis spur move. The Habanos Festival, that's the annual cigar fair in Havana, Cuba, has been postponed as the island nation faces a fuel shortage that has disrupted travel to the country, the festival's organizers say. The 26th edition of the festival, it was to be held the last week of February, but Habanos SA, the joint venture between the state-owned Cuba Tobacco and tobacco giant Altadis, that holds this global monopoly on Cuban cigars, said the postponement is aimed to preserve its high standard of quality for the festival. The postponement of the celebration is a measure aimed at protecting the experience and guaranteeing its excellence. Habanos SA said it would announce a new date coming in a timely manner. Cuba Tobacco said in an announcement that the postponement was caused by the complex economic situation that the nation is facing as a result of the intensification of the economic, commercial, and financial blockade of the government of the United States against Cuba. Now, the Trump administration declared Cuba an unusual and extraordinary threat to U.S. national security and has cut off the country from Venezuelan oil after the seizure of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. The administration has threatened to impose tariffs on other suppliers like Mexico if they continue to ship fuel to the island. Cuba has warned international airlines that jet fuel would no longer be available on the island after February 10th, and 3 Canadian airlines have suspended flights to the country as of February 9th. So what is this Habanos Festival? The Habanos Festival, it's a 5-day event that draws cigar aficionados and industry reps from around the world. The festival includes a gala dinner, visits to a tobacco farm and a cigar factory, a trade show, and then an auction of highly sought-after cigars. In the 2025 one, the auction had raised $18 million. Now, this is not just a national source of revenue for us. This is a source of pride. This is a source of connection with the outside world and a nation that has very limited foreign access, she said. Now, Sigmund has compared this cultural standing of the festival in the cigar world to other major award ceremonies, including the BAFTA, the Academy Awards, and said that the cancellation, it will have a large impact on their country. It's an all-encompassing, devastating blow to the government for its need for hard currency and for the individual people here, and citizens of Cuba who rely on hard currency, tips, gratuities, goods, Sigmund told USA Today. Now, Sigmund added that regular attendees of this festival, they would bring medical supplies and clothing into the country because they've made friends with some of these Cubans over the years. He said that the fallout from this postponement, it will largely fall on just the common man in the country.
The teen who fought for father's release from ICE detention dies. The Chicago teenager had soft tissue cancer. The Chicago teenager who garnered national attention for fighting for her father's release after he was detained by the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement in 2025 has died, the family spokesman said. Ofelia Giselle Torres Hidalgo, who was 16 years old, died on February 13th from stage 4 alveolar rhabdomyosarcoma, according to a statement from the family spokesperson. Torres Hidalgo had been diagnosed with a rare and aggressive form of soft tissue cancer in December of 2024. The teen was undergoing cancer treatment and had been home visiting her family for the weekend when her father, Ruben Torres Maldonado, was arrested October 25th at a Home Depot store in suburban Chicago, a GoFundMe page for the setup for the family states. He was detained during the Trump administration's Operation Midway Blitz, a major immigration enforcement campaign that brought a surge of federal agents to the Chicago area. Following his arrest, Torres Hidalgo posted a video on social media calling for his release. She described her father as a hard-working immigrant who cared for her younger brother while she stayed at the hospital for treatment. My dad, like many other fathers, is a hard-working person who wakes up early in the morning and goes to work without complaining, thinking about his family, Torres Hidalgo said in the video. I find it so unfair that hard-working immigrant families are being targeted just because they were not born here. Torres Hidalgo successfully fought for her father's freedom, and an immigration judge in Chicago ruled 3 days before her death that her father was conditionally entitled to receive cancellation of removal due to the hardships his deportation would cause his children, who are U.S. citizens, according to the family spokesperson. The ruling provides Torres Maldonado with a path to obtaining lawful permanent residence and eventual U.S. citizenship, the statement said. Torres Hidalgo was present via Zoom at her father's hearing last week. Ophelia was heroic and brave in the face of ISIS detention and threatened deportation of her father. Coleman Resnick, Torres Maldonado's attorney, said, In a statement, we mourn Ophelia's passing, and we hope she will serve as a model for us all for how to be courageous and to fight for what's right to our last breaths. She had a steadfast, dedicated, and truly inspiring life. Torres Hidalgo was a junior at Lakeview High School in Chicago, according to the family's attorney. Private funeral arrangements have been made. The GoFundMe page, set up by Torres Hidalgo's home teacher, Valerie Wadicki, initially asked for funds to assist with Torres Maldonado's legal fees and help the family while he was being detained. In an update on February 15th, Wadicki said the fundraiser was adjusted to help with Torres Hidalgo's funeral arrangements. I'm deeply saddened to share with you that Ophelia Torres has passed away, the GoFundMe page states. Thank you for your kindness in supporting this family during this difficult time. Thank you also for respecting their privacy as they mourn this tremendous loss. Wadicki described Torres Hidalgo as a bright, curious, and thoughtful. He said he'd been working with her as an in-home teacher while the teenager was being treated for cancer. Through my time working with Ophelia, I've grown close to her family and have learned what a dedicated mother and hardworking and loving father she has. In a statement on February 15th, Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson said the teenager led a steadfast, dedicated, and truly inspiring life. Today I join Chicagoans across our city mourning Ophelia Torres, a young woman who fought for her father and her family in the face of a cruel, targeted campaign through which Donald Trump has sought to strip from us the very humanity that defines our families and our communities, Johnson said. On October 18th, Torres Maldonado was leaving for a Home Depot store in Niles, a village bordering Chicago's far northwest side, after getting supplies for his job. As he was leaving, he was detained by federal agents. ICE agents called out to him by name. He attempted to ignore them, got in his car, and locked the door. That is when one of the 4 ICE agents started smashing the passenger side of his car in an attempt to get in. And ICE agents threatened Torres Maldonado with a gun. The GoFundMe page claims he was then willingly exited the car and was arrested. At the time, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security told NBC Chicago that Torres Maldonado had been charged multiple times with driving without insurance, driving without a valid license, and speeding, and claimed he tried to flee in his vehicle. Chicago Sun-Times reported that Torres Maldonado, a painter, entered the United States in 2003, lived in Chicago with his partner of 20 years. The judge ruled on October 2025 that Torres Maldonado was unlawfully detained and was later released on bond, according to the newspaper and NBC Chicago.
Minors attempted to bet on Super Bowl 60. Age verification vendor was busy before the game. A widely used age verification vendor for sports betting sites watched in real time during Super Bowl 60 on February 8th as a horde of kids and teens attempted to create new betting accounts on sites like DraftKings, Fanatics, and FanDuel. It was stunning. They were just scaling the walls. During the hours before and during the Super Bowl itself, the company detected attempts to manipulate birth dates at triple or more the usual rate. Now, that peaked in a single hour on February 8th, they said, when the service stopped more than 50,000 minors from creating new betting accounts. Little said Secure typically blocks more than 99% of illegal attempts, according to its internal audits. Kids, they use a variety of methods to evade the age rules by giving fraudulent information. In some cases, they use their parents' or another adult's ID with or without their knowledge. The scale of underage wagering, it's hard to measure, but a recent survey of 1,017 adolescent boys found 36% gambled in the last year. Super Bowl 60 drew about $1.7 billion in legal sports bets on February 8th, plus hundreds of millions risked in event contracts with prediction markets. Behind the scenes, the company cross-references user information against public records like phones and addresses, as well as personal data like Social Security numbers and maturity of digital footprints like emails. We saw age-washing attempts where kids were pulling together pieces of information to try to get around our systems, they said. It gives you a view that minors are trying to scam the system and using increasingly sophisticated methods to get around it. The Super Bowl, it was a pressure test of how identity detection tools can stand up to volume, they said. It shows that minors, they are relentlessly going to attempt to challenge the systems, and they are a formidable force. The latest information from the National Council on Problem Gambling shows adolescent problem gambling leads to a complex mix of criminal behavior, Poor academic achievement, truancy, financial problems, depression, suicide, and substance abuse. Now, ahead of the Super Bowl, the authors of the study on underage gambling from Common Sense Media sent NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell an open letter to seek reforms.
Well, you're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 12:30, and it's on to the money section. Egg prices begin their slow descent. Wholesale prices hit record lows in January. Egg prices are very different this year from last year, at least for now. In January and February 2025, grocery shoppers were scrambling to find eggs on bare shelves and paying skyrocketing prices. Restaurant goers were seeing egg surcharges as the industry dealt with the worst year of a bird flu outbreak. Though the threat of a highly pathogenic avian influenza or bird flu is still high, the egg industry now has an oversupply, and wholesale egg prices in early January were at record lows. An egg farmer and others in the industry told USA Today. Egg farmers are now selling their product for less than it costs to produce them. There's never been a better time to buy eggs, said Emily Metz, president and CEO of the American Egg Brand Board. And what has happened to egg prices in the past year? What has happened to the industry and egg prices is classic supply and demand. Last year, with a significant part of the U.S. egg supply affected by the bird flu during a time of seasonal demand, shoppers grew concerned and started overbuying eggs, said Jada Thompson, associate professor of agricultural economics at the University of Arkansas, and prices soared. But over the past 7 months, wholesale prices have dropped nearly 90% and reached historic lows in early January. The wholesale price of a dozen large eggs hit a low of 36 cents a dozen on January 9th. The price of eggs on the wholesale market has increased since 4.5 million hens were lost in bird flu in January and February. The February 6th USDA Egg Markets Overview report listed a dozen large eggs at a wholesale price of $1.25. Are prices down at the grocery store? Prices at the grocery store have come down, but not as dramatically as the wholesale prices. Retailers often work through their contracts with suppliers on a quarterly or half-year basis. Additionally, retailers will sometimes delay price increases or decreases when markets spike or soften. Comparing the latest retail egg price information from available from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, the average cost for a dozen grade A eggs in the United States was $2.58 in January 2026, compared with $4.95 in 2025. The highest CPI price for eggs was in March of 2025, when it was $6.23. Prices remained high in April and May and began to drop in June 2025. According to the USA Today's grocery tracker, based on data from Data Assembly, egg prices have been on a roller coaster since mid-2022, hitting peaks in the winters of 2023 and 2025 when they rose over 150% above pre-pandemic prices in January. Since then, prices have cooled. They're down 37% the first week of February compared with the same week last year, but remain about 47% higher than in February 2020. Some Walmart shoppers could have already seen egg prices drop at their local stores. And tracking real-time prices collected weekly from Walmart's online marketing place for its one location in each state, data shows that egg prices in multiple states have fallen since late October, when USA Today began tracking them. For example, egg prices in New Jersey dropped from $6.54 a dozen to $2.96 last week at Walmart stores. In Chicago, the prices fell from $3.46 to $2.96. Is bird flu still a threat? The bird flu outbreak strain H5N1, which started among poultry flocks and wild birds in Europe in the fall of 2020 before moving to the United States, has become the nation's largest such outbreak. Between the fourth quarter of 2024 and the first quarter of 2025, the industry lost 50 million laying hens. Will prices rise again? No one can predict what prices are going to do because the bird flu is unpredictable. Additionally, next month we could have millions of birds out of the system, and we could see the whole system problem flip-flop again. The egg farming industry has always gone through periods of high and low prices, but nothing to the magnitude of the past 5 years with bird flu. Last year in particular was hard when the industry lost so many birds, and it created a disaster and a huge shortage which made prices go crazy.
No kids doesn't mean no estate. The experts say a plan may be even more crucial. More Americans are opting not to have kids, which is complicating traditional wealth and estate planning, the experts say. Without a next generation in line, who will take care of these childless Americans to ensure that their dying wishes are fulfilled and oversee where their assets go after death? Why is the planning so different? Planning usually assumes that Americans do have a next of kin. People, they have wills because they have kids, they said. But everyone should really have one. Only 19.9% of childless adults, they have a will. Now that's compared with 32% of the general population. So what's at stake? Without a medical and financial POA, a person's wishes, should the person become incapacitated, are unknown. Their personal health and financial decisions could be left to a stranger or a court. Estates without clear directives can be subject to lengthy and expensive probate court proceedings, which can consume up to 10% of that estate's value and take months or years to resolve, they have said in their report. So, whom should childless Americans call? Childless Americans should first try to find trusted friends or relatives to serve as their POA, their executor, or their trustee. Take a step back and pretend something happens to you. Who would come running, she says. If the answer is your sister, well, then put her down. What if you have no one to do the job, though? Being someone's medical or financial POA or executor or trustee, it's a big responsibility that a friend or perhaps a younger relative may not want to commit to. Or maybe you just don't have enough people in your life to trust. So in that case, you may want to call a professional, like an attorney, a financial advisor, or trust banks, the experts have said. So how should childless Americans plan financially? Like everyone else, childless Americans should save enough for retirement and especially for long-term care, the experts have said. They should also get burial insurance for their own funeral expenses, he said. And don't forget to name a guardian for your pet or leave money to pay for its care in your will if you have a pet, he said. Zygmunt said childless people can enjoy their money and spend down as much as they want because they don't have an heir. But not all childless people are spenders. Fundamental saving and spending habits, it can be ingrained, they said. Many people tend to either leave their money to charities or nieces and nephews and sometimes siblings. But without direct descendants, the concept of legacy, it's reframed from one of the familiar successions to one of personal impact and philanthropic purpose, the Child Free Trust has said in its report.
3 major changes at national parks since the layoffs. Representation, staffing cuts are among the moves. It's been roughly a year since the sweeping National Park Service layoffs that park advocates dubbed the Valentine's Day Massacre. Around the same time, references to transgender people were scrubbed from Stonewall National Monument's website, and the conservation groups began sounding alarms about other potential changes to public lands. A lot has changed for the park since then. However, unlike the recent introduction of new fees for foreign tourists at some of America's most popular parks and new public lands pass featuring Presidents Donald Trump and George Washington, some changes aren't always obvious to visitors. They just need to be more aware of what is happening to their beloved national parks, said Bill Wade, Executive Director of the Nonprofit Association of National Park Rangers. And here are the biggest systemic changes over the past year. Representation in parks. In recent years, national parks made a concerted effort to find those stories that are less told or haven't been told yet and tell them fiercely, said Biden Area National Park Service Director Chuck Sams, the first Native American in that role. So over the last 3+ years, working all across the park system, we've been able to tell stories to ensure that every American sees a reflection of themselves in the parks. On his first day in office, Trump issued several executive orders tackling federal diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts, and then later, how America portrays its own history. The former called DEI programs illegal and immoral, while the latter specifically directed the Interior Secretary to ensure that all public monuments, memorials, statues, markers, or similar properties within the Department of Interior's jurisdiction do not contain descriptions, depictions, or other content that inappropriately disparage Americans past or living, and instead focus on the greatness of the achievements and progress of the American people, or with respect to natural features, the beauty, abundance, and grandeur of the American landscape. Interior Secretary Doug Burgum followed suit with department-level orders aimed at ending DEI programs and gender ideology extremism, and restoring truth and sanity to American history. As parks took action, some including the Cuyahoga Valley National Park in Ohio, as visitors report signs that may be negative about Americans. This January, visitors at the Independence National Historic Park in Philadelphia recorded a video of signs about enslaved people being removed from George Washington's house. More recently, volunteers reported a pride flag was removed from the Stonewall Monument in New York City. The Washington Post also reported on plans to remove signs on Native American history and climate change in parks like the Grand Canyon, sparking pushback from tribal members. Wade said many parks have been asked to remove signs, videos, and website information. The Interior Department said the president has directed federal agencies to review interpretive materials to ensure accuracy, honesty, and alignment with shared national values. Following completion of the required review, the National Park Service is now taking action to remove or revise interpretive materials in accordance with the order. However, Kristen Brengel, the Senior Vice President of Government Affairs for the nonprofit National Parks Conservation Association, told USA Today, it's absolutely an effort to sanitize our history. It's absolutely an effort to minimize some of the tragic moments of our history and just completely erase it from our parks. The association says its mission is to protect and preserve parks on the ground, in the courtroom, or on Capitol Hill. Some of those events that occurred in the history of this country we're probably not very proud of these days and shouldn't be proud of, but they're a part of history, said Wade, who spent his career serving in parks before retiring as superintendent of Shenandoah National Park in Virginia. The Association of National Park Rangers is comprised of current and past park staff, volunteers, and supporters. When asked about interpretive changes and how the Park Service decides what to remove, the Office of the Secretary of Interior said the National Park Service is continuing to operate under existing law, policy, and Department of the Interior direction, and we reject the premise that there has been a system-wide effort to remove history, limit science, or politicize park operations. The office added there's no centralized directive to purge interpretive content and no change to the site's core mission. Staffing cuts. The National Park Service mission, according to the website, is to conserve the system's natural and cultural resources for current and future generations. However, there are fewer people to carry out the mission these days. Over the past year, the National Park Service has lost about 25% of its full-time staffers, according to the National Parks Conservation Association and Association of National Park Rangers. That is due to both firing and people being encouraged to take a resignation, or people retiring and just trying to get out before they might get fired, Brengel said, adding that more staffing reductions may still be to come. Wade noted that many who've left were senior leaders and specialized scientists working on issues that don't just affect parks like water quality and air quality. He and Brengel pointed out to long-standing research being paused and other park projects being shelved. Brengel also flagged visitor-facing concerns such as potential vandalism and poaching. All of these activities that we've been preventing for over 100 years, they start to happen again because people know there aren't enough staff out there, she said. The Office of the Secretary of Interior told USA Today it does not confirm third-party staffing complaints or speculate on hypothetical impacts and continues to manage its workforce, research, and visitor services to keep parks open, safe, and accessible. Burgum issued a secretarial order last April ensuring national parks are open and accessible and that the National Park Service would provide the best customer service experience for all visitors. Both Brengel and Wade lauded National Park Service for their continued commitment, even while losing colleagues and taking on extra duties at times. The National Park Service is still very passionate about doing the best job it can for the American people, Wade said. Managing the land. There are 433 units in the National Park Service system, including 87 national monuments. The national monuments have drawn particular attention across recent administrations. They're unique because presidents may establish them on existing federal lands or waters at their discretion under the Activities Act of 1906. No congressional approval is needed. Just boom, here's a national monument. So long as it's designed to protect natural, historic, or scientific features, said J.B. Rule, the David Daniels Allen Distinguished Chair in Law at Vanderbilt Law School. Rule specializes in environmental and natural resources law liken the proclamations to an executive order or a presidential memorandum.
And you're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Our time is 12:44. Next up, we have USA Today's column called Ask Johnny, which of course is written by the Johnny C. Taylor expert. Now, with some tips, introverts can be effective leaders. Here's our first question to Johnny. I'm an introvert who prefers quieter work and one-on-one interactions. Now, I have been encouraged to pursue a supervisor role, but I'm not sure that my personality fits with the traditional idea of a manager. Can introverts really be effective leaders? And this comes from Jordan. And here's Johnny's answer to Jordan. Yes, in short, yes. Introverts can be highly effective leaders, and many already are. The idea that managers must be loud and constantly visible or the most vocal person, that's a myth. There's no single personality type that defines good leadership, and anyone who tells you otherwise clearly hasn't spent time leading. What matters isn't how much you speak, but how well you listen, how clearly you set expectations, and how consistently you follow them through. I say this from personal experience. I'm an introvert. Leadership didn't change that, and it didn't require me to become someone I'm not. What it did require, though, was self-awareness, knowing how I recharge, recognizing my limits, and managing my energy internally. Leaders, and particularly introverts, who ignore those realities, they tend to burn out. Those who respect them, though, they tend to thrive. Strong managers, regardless of disposition, share the same core strengths. They provide clarity. They give timely feedback. They address issues directly. They create environments where people know what success looks like and then believe they can achieve it. Now, none of that hinges on where they fall in the introversion-extroversion spectrum. It really depends on consistency, accountability, and follow-through. Now, in fact, introverts often excel at one of the most important aspects of management, like one-on-one leadership. Employees are more likely to open up when they feel heard rather than just talked over. Quieter leaders often build trust faster because they ask thoughtful questions and listen without rushing to fill that silence. Now, that said, leadership, it is demanding. It requires emotional energy, decision-making under pressure, and the willingness to have uncomfortable conversations. Introverts don't get a pass on these responsibilities. The key is learning how to manage the load. Build recovery time into your schedule. Set boundaries when you can. Don't confuse availability with effectiveness. I've learned, and sometimes the hard way, that ignoring those personal needs comes at a cost. Burnout doesn't make you a better leader. Respecting your limits, that does. And if you choose to pursue a management role, don't try to lead like someone else. Just be yourself with intention. Organizations don't need a universal leadership style. They need leaders who know who they are, understand their own impact, and take responsibility for how they show up. Introversion, it isn't a barrier to effective leadership. Lack of self-awareness is. And of course, that was written by Johnny C. Taylor, who is a human resource expert.
The jury awards $25 million to a man in the Pam cooking spray lawsuit. The California jury has awarded $25 million to a man who claimed exposure to Pam cooking spray caused severe damage to his lungs. Roland Esparza of Los Angeles sued Conagra Brands, the maker of Pam, in 2020, claiming the company negligently sold defective products that could cause exposure to dangerous chemicals. After years of litigation, the case went to trial last month. On February 4th, the jury awarded Esparza $25 million in damages, finding Conagra acted negligently and failed to warn consumers about the risk of using Pam cooking spray. Esparza's attorneys said in a statement that Esparza developed a lung condition after regularly using Pam. This unanimous $25 million verdict delivers long overdue justice to Roland Esparza, once a highly active individual who now faces a double lung transplant after Conagra deceptively marketed the Pam cooking spray as safe. Conagra said in a statement that it intends to pursue all available legal avenues to contest the verdict. We disagree with and are disappointed with the jury's verdict. Pam butter flavor cooking spray is safe, and we have been diacetyl-free for nearly 2 years, the company's statement reads. Esparza's initial complaints state he had purchased Pam butter flavored cooking spray since 1993 and used it to cook for himself 2 or 3 times a day, regularly spraying it on a frying pan while standing over the stove. Through his frequent use of the spray, Esparza claimed he was exposed to hazardous food flavoring chemicals, including diacetyl and acetylpropionyl. As a result, Esparza said he suffers permanent injuries, including severe damage to the respiratory system, extreme shortness of breath, significantly reduced life expectancy, and a lung condition known as bronchiolitis obliterans. The lawsuit accused Conagra of knowing the potential harm from the chemicals and failing to protect Esparza from them. Conagra said diacetyl was removed from PAM in 2009. Conagra also argued that Esparza's own negligence contributed to his harm, according to the verdict slip. Ultimately, the jury disagreed. Diacetyl is a chemical often used to give butter-like flavors to food products, including popcorn. Acetylpropionyl, also mentioned in the lawsuit, is a diacetyl substitute, according to the OSHA, Occupational Safety and Health Administration. A study suggests people exposed to diacetyl, such as in microwave popcorn manufacturing facilities, are likely to develop lung disease like bronchiolitis obliterans, according to OSHA. Diacetyl enters the body when a person breathes vapors, spray droplets, or dust containing the chemical, but a person's health risk depends on how much they consume, according to California Department of Health Services. Aside from lung damage, diacetyl can sting or burn the eyes, nose, and throat and cause skin irritation. Health risks can be mitigated by using respiratory protection, closed containers, and proper ventilation.
And now I'm going to take you back to our front section for my next article. Underground lava tube is found on Venus. The discovery confirms the planet's volcanic history. A vast underground tunnel formed from ancient volcanic activity has been discovered lurking beneath Venus. Though scientists have long had evidence that Venus was once a volcanically active world, they haven't been able to find any sign of the features known as lava tubes that are common on the Earth, the Moon, and on Mars. Until now. The landmark discovery, it was highlighted in research published on February 9th in the journal Nature Communications. It marks the first time a subsurface feature has ever been detected on the Earth's planetary neighbor. Now, the study was part of a project funded by the Italian Space Agency. Our knowledge of Venus is still limited, and until now, we've never had the opportunity to directly observe processes occurring beneath the surface of the Earth's twin planet. The study lead author Lorenzo Bruzzone, a radar and planetary scientist at the University of Trento in Italy, said, "The identification of a volcanic cavity is therefore of particular importance, as it allows us to validate theories that for many years have only hypothesized their existence." So, what is the Magellan spacecraft? The orbiter looks at Venus in the 90s. Launched back in 1989, Magellan, it was a NASA orbiter that spent about 4 years imaging the entire surface of Venus. Now, though it's one of the brightest objects in our solar system, the second planet from the sun, it's shrouded in an air of secrecy by thick clouds that hides its surface. But Magellan was equipped with radar technology that allowed it to penetrate the Venus's atmosphere to get an unprecedented look at the planet, and it's just slightly smaller than Earth. It was when the probe began returning high-resolution images in the year of 1990 of Venus's terrain that scientists got the first evidence of past volcanism on the planet. So, what are lava tubes? Underground cavities found on Venus. Taking a fresh look at radar data collected by Magellan, a team of scientists was able to spot a large underground cavity on Venus that was created by a lava flow. This geological feature is often referred to as a lava tube. That's a subsurface conduit for molten lava, and it's common around volcanic areas on our Earth. Scientists also suspect that lava tubes are present on the Moon and on Mars. But because they are underground, these caves typically remain hidden unless a surface collapse creates a visible pit. That's according to the researchers. The team specifically analyzed data that was from 1990 to 92 by Magellan's Synthetic Aperture Radar remote sensing instrument. The locations under examination, they showed signs of surface collapse, suggesting that lava tubes could be beneath there, the Reuters has reported. A new imaging technique, it helped confirm that the structure they detected was part of an empty lava tube on the side of a 225-mile-wide Venusian volcano that was named Nix Mons on the planet's northern hemisphere. Now, the tube has an estimated average diameter of about 0.6 of a mile, a roof as thick as 490 feet, and then an empty cavity descending at least 1/4 of a mile. Future NASA ESA missions to study Venus. Because Venus has a history of volcanic activity, the presence of lava tubes, it isn't exactly a surprise, but confirming that they exist could be important for future missions to Venus, the researchers say. Though Venus has received less scientific attention than Mars, two important missions they are coming up. The European Space Agency's Envision and NASA's Veritas. Set to launch no earlier than the year 2031, Veritas will study Venus in an unprecedented detail from near the top of the clouds to the planet's surface, the NASA's website says. Now, meanwhile, Envision will also due for launch in 2031, will carry an orbital ground-penetrating radar to provide a complete view of Venus from its inner core to its upper atmosphere. Anything else?
Yeah, we have your gum health is one key to living a longer life. Periodontitis is linked to a higher risk of diseases. Experts say your gums, yes, that often overlooked part of your dental hygiene routine, can have a major impact on your overall health. It may be aging you faster than you think. More and more people are seeing the mouth as a gateway to the body, or understanding that oral health and systemic health are not just correlated, but they're actually causally related. What is gum disease and how is it related to health? Gum disease, otherwise known as gingivitis or periodontitis, is generalized inflammation of the soft tissues around the teeth. It's basically an infectious disease, but it yields a significant amount of inflammation, and that inflammation is really where the concern lies. We're finding that there's an increased risk for cognitive decline, including things like Alzheimer's, in patients who have had chronic inflammation in the soft tissue. With more inflammation comes narrower blood vessels, which decreases the amount of blood flow to organs such as the brain and heart. The Centers for Disease Control agrees that untreated periodontitis can make chronic conditions such as diabetes worse. Other conditions linked to gum disease include increased risk of heart disease, respiratory diseases such as pneumonia, Alzheimer's disease, and even certain cancers. Researchers found that men with gum disease are 49% more likely to develop kidney cancer, and 54% more likely to develop pancreatic cancer, and 30% more likely to develop blood cancer. A recent study out of Japan also correlated a significant increase in lifespan with the number of repaired or healthy teeth that you have versus patients who are without teeth. It's not even just gingival health or soft tissue health. It's really health in your mouth overall that speaks to the overall health of your body.
And you've been listening to a reading of articles from our USA Today for Tuesday, February the 17th on our AgriFrontier radio reading service. We'll return to you for more readings just after our short break. And your readers again today are Jody
and Alan Blackburn.
That's perfect.
If you're listening to this publication online, you're probably using our website, a podcast player like Spotify or iTunes, a streaming service like Siro, or a smart speaker. Did you know that we now have a dedicated app that can be downloaded to any mobile device, like a smartphone or tablet, for free? App users can conveniently access our live stream and any episode of our podcast easier than ever. To download the app, just type NFRRS in the search window in the Apple App Store or in the Google Play Store. Contact us anytime if you have any questions by calling 716-821-5555, extension 5. Thank you.
We'll continue now with our reading of articles from today's issue of USA Today. Your readers are
Jody
and Alan Blackburn. It's on to the sports section. NBA icon Jordan is the current face of NASCAR. Raise your hand if you knew had Michael Jordan becoming the face of NASCAR. Not sure about the shelf life of this new role for the basketball god and global brand. For now, he's here to preach the stock car sermon. And if there's any hesitation among the sports marketeers, they should take a deep breath and embrace the opportunity. This is a column by Ken Willis of the Daytona Beach News Journal. Tyler Reddick won the Daytona 500 on February 15th and will get his due. But in the afterglow of the 68th Daytona 500, he'll have a co-star in the highlight reels. Well, it's big for the sport, said Denny Hamlin, who splits his duties as one of George's two co-owners and a future Hall of Fame racer. He's the most popular athlete in the world. I don't think there's any disputing that. And he loves the sport. 2 months ago, Jordan was part of NASCAR's worst nightmare. He wasn't just the co-owner of one or two teams suing NASCAR in an antitrust court, but basically the face of the plaintiffs. Parties settled before the case could go to jury, and while it was largely assumed Jordan's side came out on the better side of the settlement, details remain out of public view. There was no hiding Sunday's winners, Tyler Reddick, obviously, but also his 23XI race team and the most popular public of faces associated with the team. I can't even believe it, Jordan said after bear-hugging Reddick and helping lift the Harley J. Earl Trophy. You never know how these races are going to end. They just try to survive. And that's not just a casual fan talking, by the way. This isn't a guy parachuting in as an investor. Michael Jordan knows his NASCAR, and that's the big reason no one at headquarters should feel the least bit sheepish about taking advantage of this. His pre-race chat on Fox, when asked about his lifelong history with the Daytona 500, made the point. It was a group event, he said, of his childhood. The family sat there and we watched the race. 4 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours. Didn't matter. We were going to watch the race. To me, to have an opportunity to continue to come back and be a part of this kind of reminds me of being back home in North Carolina and be able to connect with the family and watch the race. That's the type of stuff NASCAR would, should, and could run with. And they will. Mainly because all the others will and think they have little choice. But frankly, it seems as if it'll happily be a joint venture. And here's why. Jim France's appearance in the victory lane, congratulating everyone, including Michael Jordan, greenlights that effort. No one can recall Jim being in victory lane after Daytona 500. Maybe he's been there, maybe not, but he was there Sunday. And we go back to Jordan's pre-race Fox chatter and consider Hamlin's post-race talk about a get-together this last week between his group and NASCAR higher-ups. Everything went well, it seemed. First from Hamlin. It seems like it's more of a collaborative pull of the rope. It seems like we're all willing to make the changes to make this sport grow. We have to work really hard at it, but I think it's going to get there. And Jordan, regarding the lesson learned from it all, communication. We both needed to have a conversation about change and how we can grow this sport. Ultimately, we had to go through what we had to go through. I think coming out of that, we have a much better appreciation of each other. I think it opens up conversations amongst each other to continue to grow the game. At the end, this from Jordan, which sounds like a throwaway line that might actually be prophetic. I think everybody's going to be okay.
The Tkachuk brothers are a blast for the USA. Described by their Olympic coach as beasts on the ice, Team USA hockey teammates vouch Brady and Matthew Tkachuk are an absolute hoot to be around. They're every bit as entertaining as you guys think they are, Dylan Larkin said. They're unbelievable team guys. It's a blast, and you've got to see it at the Four Nations. The brothers, they drew Four Nations face-off headlines back in 25 for each picking a fight with a Canadian player, but they have now wisely kept away from the fisticuffs at the Winter Olympics, as fighting is illegal in international hockey. They have limited their hands to handling their hockey sticks. Now, the U.S. men have so far made a point about staying in the athletes' village and having as much fun as possible outside the games. USA Hockey's social presence has helped show the funny side of these brothers. There was a clip of them being interviewed by Elmo from Sesame Street. He snores like a madman, so I have to go to bed first, Matthew said. But other than that, it's been great. Elmo said, it kind of sounds like you're Bert and Ernie. The brothers, they do like to make noise. They like to talk, offering a counterbalance to the more quiet captain of their team, who is Austin Matthews. Matthews has been leading by example so far in the tournament, going to the net to score goals. I think it's inspiring, says Coach Mike Sullivan, that the players lead different ways. Austin isn't the most vocal guy. He's a quiet guy by nature, but he leads through his example. The brothers have been credited by Sullivan for being the catalyst for helping us become the team that we have sought to become at Four Nations, and are doing it again on an international stage. Said by teammate Zach Werenski, I've played with Matthew back in the day at the U.S. national team and the World Juniors, so I'm familiar with him. And now I've become more familiar with Brady the last few years at World Championships and Four Nations. They are just awesome for the team.
Here's a column by Blake Topmeyer about college football. Wanted, college commish. I have one in mind, a sensible idea sounding Texas veteran athletic director Del Conte. When Texas athletic director Chris Del Conte floated the idea of killing the SEC football championship game, the crowd of Longhorn fans applauded his suggestion. Start the playoffs that week, Del Conte said recently at Town Hall, and everyone said, amen. Del Conte was just warming up. He uncorked several more ideas, like playing the college football playoff semifinals on January 1st and the national championship a week later. He also lobbied for playoff expansion within a framework that protects the regular season's value. Whoa, now this man is making too much sense. Can't have such logical ideas within college football, can we? I'm one vote, Del Conte said, but this is where we need to get to. More sane talk like this. Perhaps Del Conte needs to be nominated for college football commissioner. Alas, no such position exists. Anyway, maybe Del Conte thinks he can run the sport from his pulpit in Texas. He's one vote, but his voice resonates from a school accustomed to calling the shots. Talk to someone familiar with how the old Big 12 operated, and they'll tell you how one school, the one that wears burnt orange, controlled the levers of power. Now comfortable in its SEC digs, Texas already has achieved one of its priorities, increasing the SEC schedule to 9 games. Texas hadn't even joined the SEC yet when Del Conte started advocating for a 9-game conference schedule, like the Longhorns had in Big 12. For many years, the SEC debated expanding its conference schedule, but did nothing. Then, just more than a year after Texas joined, SEC membership voted to add a 9th conference game. Coincidence? Maybe. But Texas is pretty good at getting its way. Ask Texas A&M. The Aggies wanted to be the SEC's only Texas school. Too bad, the SEC said. Capitulating to Texas comes with a word of caution. The Big 12 feeding Texas is like a king contributed to the distrust and unraveling within the old iteration of that conference. Del Conte, though, is broadly respected within his industry. His sensible ideas almost sounded like a platform for a potential college football commissioner. Del Conte's vision includes, number 1, valuing marquee non-conference games to bring value to you all. Ask why Texas wouldn't cancel its games against Ohio State in 2026 and Michigan in 2027. Pursue cupcakes and more conducive to a better record to seduce the playoff committee. Del Conte put it like this: fans whose dollars support the enterprise deserve to see good games, like the Ohio State-Texas, instead of a feast of cream puffs. We scheduled great games here to bring value to you all, Del Conte said. I want our fans, the Longhorn Nation, to be able to watch Ohio State in this stadium. I want fans in Longhorn Nation to be able to watch Michigan, along with our SEC slate. But I had a lot of people say, we need to cancel those games. No, we're going to honor our word. And let's be honest, TV networks want these games, and television dollars subsidize college sports incorporated. It's redeemable, if perhaps not advisable, to see Texas welcome opponents like Ohio State and Michigan at a time when schools like Penn State and Indiana are stumbling all over themselves to line up the easiest possible 3-pack of non-conference opponents. Del Conte's long-term objective appears to be a pair of marquee non-conference game marquee non-conference game with a 9-game conference schedule plus an expanded playoff big enough to accommodate teams that repeatedly challenged themselves in tough games and lost a few times. One could envision a college football commissioner, if such a position existed, demanding all Power 4 teams to play at least 10 power opponents be eligible for the playoff selection. Number 2, Week 0 becomes Week 1. In Del Conte's view, Week 0 should become Week 1, turning Labor Day weekend into Week 2. That's a fine start. Why not take it a step further? Start the season what's now Week 0 and install a 13th regular season game, creating more revenue and another playoff data point. I wonder what a CFB commission might say to that. Number 3, dump conference championship games that have become weird. Del Conte didn't elaborate on his desire to dump the SEC championship game. No need to elaborate. Consider last season. Georgia routed Alabama for the SEC title, and neither team moved even one spot in the ensuing rankings. Why have a conference championship game, Del Conte mused at his town hall. Why indeed? Once revolutionary, conference champion games outlived their utility. Number 4, speed up the college football playoffs conclusion for everyone. Without conference championships in the way, Thanksgiving weekend rivalry games could lead into playoff selection, with playoff games beginning the first weekend in December. Start the playoffs that first week in December, and let's play every single week, and the semifinals are played on New Year's Day, and the national championship a week later. Del Conte suggested that's what I'd like to see. Not a bad plan, much better than concluding the season on January 25th, 1 week after Martin Luther King Jr. Day. That's what will happen next season. Number 5, expand the playoff. Del Conte desires playoff expansion, although he didn't specify the number of teams. Is playoff expansion needed? That's debatable, but every power conference commissioner wants it. They just don't agree on the size and format. Del Conte pointed out Texas's bowl game against Michigan averaged a TV audience of 9.1 million viewers. The BYU Georgia Tech bowl game averaged 8.7 million. The way he tells it, postseason viewership merits a bigger playoff. Viewership is there during the holidays, Del Conte said. No one's doing anything. They're sitting at home, freezing their tail off, drinking a cocktail, eating some old fruitcake. I mean, we can do this, but this is what it's going to take. It's going to take thoughtful leaders to look at that. Almost sounds like a job for a college football commissioner. I have one in mind. He wears a 10-gallon hat. And this Blake Topmeyer is the USA Today Network's senior national football columnist.
And you're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on our Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Our time is 1:12, and we're still in sports. We're going to talk skating. U.S. figure skating, it's only getting better. For most of the 21st century, U.S. pairs figure skating has kind of been an afterthought. While the men, women, and ice dancers sent 3 representatives in the respective disciplines, it became the norm to just send 2 pairs. And even then, they really weren't medal favorites. It was never something that Team USA boasted about. But things appear to be changing in the right direction. While not quiet podium contenders, the teams of Ellie Kam and Danny O'Shea, with Emily Chan and Spencer Akira Howe, showed the American pairs division is on the rise, starting the short program up on a strong note to set up what could be a milestone finish. Team USA's night on February 15th began with a team that technically got in thanks to some breaks. National championship Elisa Efimova and Misha Mitrofanov, as well as third-place finishers Katie McBeath and Danielle Parkman, they couldn't qualify for the Olympics due to citizenship issues. Then that opened the door for the fourth-placers Chan and Howe. It was at the U.S. Figure Skating Championships where the two had had a rough short program. It was riddled with mistakes that almost took them out of contention. But clearly, a month of preparation has helped them. There was a night and day difference in their performance, highlighted by dazzling triple toe loop. Even better, there were no mess-ups. Chan and Howe earned a score of 70.06, more than 10 points of what they got in the same program a month ago. It earned praise from the 2006 ice dance medalist Ben Augusto, telling the crowd inside the arena it's the best I've seen them in a very long time. So that set it up for the teams the team event's unsung heroes. After playing a critical role in the U.S. winning gold, Cam and O'Shea rode the wave from a week ago. However, the short program in the team event was tough since Cam fell on the throw triple loop. Now, since winning gold, they have spent time away from the Olympic Village to pull their emotions together and keep their good vibes going. Then, this time around, there was no hitting the ice. Cam was able to keep her balance on the throw, proof that their plan has worked. Despite some minor self-inflicted mistakes from O'Shea, the pair didn't just get a better score than the team event. They got their season best. They got a 71.87. The performance itself is something we're really proud of, he said. We stayed on our feet, we got rid of those bigger mistakes, and we got our season's best. Heading into the free skate February 16th, Cam and O'Shea were in 7th place with Chan and Howe in 9th. It may not seem impressive, but it does mark quite the accomplishment. With the 2022 games, the U.S. has now had 2 pairs in the top 10 standings after the short program in back-to-back Olympics. O'Shea credited Alexa Kiernan and Brandon Frazier, whose 6th-place finishes back in 2022 was Team USA's best since 2002, for opening the door for improvement in the category. We're only getting better, she says. Now the U.S. can compete in the free dance by having 2 top 10 finishers in back-to-back Olympics for the first time this century. It's nothing to brag about, but it does show there's an upward trend for discipline that's been desperately looking for one for decades. Will either team snap the skid and become the first American pair to win an Olympics medal since '88? Well, not likely. But given how unpredictable figure skating has gone in Milan Cortina Winter Games, including in the pairs, nothing can be ruled out entirely. So, medal or not, the 2 teams are proving that there's a resurgence in pairs, and it may be a few Olympics away from finally standing on that podium once again. I'm so proud of what the pairs in the U.S. have been doing, O'Shea said. We really hope to keep that tradition going.
And the U.S. women rout Sweden with a 3-goal barrage in 3 minutes in the Olympics. Captain Hillary Knight stood on the ice as her Team USA women's hockey teammates filed off one by one after a resounding performance February 16th at the Winter Olympics. The 5-time Winter Olympian, chasing her 2nd Olympic gold medal, fist bumped each of them, the last to go through the gap in the boards and head to the locker room. There was Kayla Barnes, who scored about 5 minutes into the 5-0 semifinal win over Sweden, her first tournament goal. And there was Taylor Hayes, Abby Murphy, Kendall Coyne-Schofield, and Haley Skamura, who all scored in the second period, the latter 3 of whom scored within less than 3 minutes of each other. Lila Edwards, the first black woman to score at the Olympics for U.S. Team USA, was the second-to-last player off the ice. She tallied an assist in this win. When Edwards stepped off the ice, Knight gave her a tap on the back with her stick. The seasoned veteran, the player who grew up idolizing her headlining a deep, gash, dangerous, and richly talented squad at these games. The players lingered briefly before heading into the tunnel, waving to fans and taking in the moment. They got past their second-to-last hurdle, standing between them and the coveted Olympic gold medal, in which the U.S. women have won twice in 1998 and 2018, and will play for at 1:10 p.m. on Thursday. Knight remains 1 goal and 1 point away from setting the U.S. Olympic all-time record in both categories. She has 2 goals and 3 assists in this tournament, and that is fine with her, the vaunted leader quickly deflecting all praise to her teammates at every turn. The Americans outshot the Swedes 34-23. Goaltender Aaron Frankel was impenetrable, keeping Sweden off the board with spectacular save after spectacular save to preserve a 5th consecutive shutout. And on to baseball news. The Padres are elated to land the divorced Castellanos. Nick Castellanos spoke calmly, even evenly, almost emotionless, on February 15th after signing with the San Diego Padres, saying there are no hard feelings for the way his tenure ended with the Philadelphia Phillies. He also has no regrets. This is a column by Bob Nightingale. Castellanos, released by the Phillies after attempting to trade him all winter, apologized in an open letter to the Phillies fans for bringing a beer into the dugout during a game against the Miami Marlins in June after being pulled from a game. What I will learn from this is just letting my emotions get the best of me in the moment, Castellanos says. Possibly if I can see things that frustrate me or I don't believe are conducive to winning, to speaking up when I see it instead of letting things just pile up over time. Then finally, when I address it, it's less emotional. Yet he has no remorse over publicly venting his frustrations. In the moment, I felt how I felt how I felt, and I spoke from the heart, and it was honest in every word that I said. It's not like that was outwardly even ever displaying like I kept all inside. When I was asked a question, I shot straight, and then people perceived how they wanted to. When asked if he wished things had ended differently in Philadelphia, he shook his head, citing only the failure to win a World Series championship. I mean, I think winning solves everything, Castellanos said. So I think the one thing that I wish I could have been when it ended up different is that we would have won. Castellanos, who's 33 years old, who was in the final year of a 5-year, $100 million contract, was labeled as a malcontent, with several teammates privately calling him selfish. When he openly criticized manager Rob Thompson for his lack of communication, the Phillies decided they didn't want him back and told every team that he was available. A.J. Preller, the Padres president of baseball operations, said he spoke frequently with the president, Dombrowski, about acquiring Castellanos beginning last November, knowing they likely would have been released if he wasn't traded. They stayed patient and pounced February 12th when he was released. The Padres immediately set up a Zoom call with Castellanos. Preller, general manager Joseph Stein, and the rookie manager Craig Stammen spoke to him and determined that whatever problems he might have had in Philadelphia, he'd be just fine in the San Diego clubhouse. We did a lot of homework, Preller said. We were just trying to get a grasp of exactly what happened. So we talked to a ton of people that have history with Nick, teammates, coaches, people who have been around him. It was more about the clubhouse dynamic, getting information about work ethic and the love of the game, what kind of teammate he is. Preller admits he was originally unaware of the beer incident, so yes, they talked about that too. Obviously, everyone's got their side of the story, Preller said, but I think for us it was most important about getting face-to-face with him, hearing his thoughts. Castellanos' explanation was convincing enough for the Padres to go ahead and sign him. You know, I've made many mistakes on this job, Preller said, and ultimately when people own up to those mistakes, and he did that in our call, it's about giving guys another opportunity. He gets a fresh start here and a fresh opportunity. Preller also got the blessing from several of their veterans, including third baseman Manny Machado. Machado, a childhood friend of Castellanos growing up in Miami, immediately gave his blessing. I really don't know the details of what happened over there, Machado said. Don't really care. At the end of the day, we want him to come out here and ball out. I know that he's a baller. He can play the outfield, play a little bit at first base. He can hit with the best of us in the big leagues. So, you know, to have him in our lineup is going to be huge. Castellanos, who has hit 250 homers with 920 RBIs in his 14-year MLB career, says he's looking forward to proving he's still an everyday player. He's been in the postseason 5 times in the last 6 years, but has never won a World Series, believing that winning a title with Machado would be the ultimate dream. And while Castellanos says San Diego is a perfect fit and is his son's favorite city, he brought up Padres' close-knit relationship with players, believing that his deteriorating relationship with Thompson or coaches wouldn't happen in San Diego. How they treat their players, Castellanos said, and how they have their backs. Even if you know something goes a little awry, they still stand with him. They don't deviate from their commitment to him as a person. So all those things come into account. The way Padres figure it, they're adding a 2-time All-Star who still hit 17 homers and drove in 72 runs for virtually nothing. They're paying Castellanos the minimum $780,000 salary, with the Padres picking up the remainder of his $20 million contract. So if Castellanos doesn't perform well, turns out to not be a fit in the clubhouse, the Padres could easily dump him. No harm, no foul, and no risk. They're giving me an opportunity. That's all I asked for, Castellanos said. To be able to come here, be myself, work hard, make a club, earn my playing time, and just really help in any way that I can. I think this is a very talented team. There's a lot of veterans here. The city of San Diego has never won a World Series. So however I can contribute to that and help this team accomplish that, the goal, I'm more than willing to do so.
Morikawa rediscovers artistry to end his drought. The 20-minute that Colin Morikawa had to wait in the 18th fairway before he flushed a 4-iron from 235 yards at the par 5 into a howling left to right wind was a perfect metaphor of the 28-month winless spell that he endured on the PGA Tour. Tied for the lead after a bogey at 17, Morikawa capped off his weekend stripe show with a beauty that ended up just right of the green, and he was able to putt it into to tap-in range. Morikawa's birdie at the 72nd hole secured the AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am by one stroke over Min Woo Lee and Sepp Straka back on February 15th. Morikawa shot a 5 under 67 at the Pebble Beach Golf Links and finished with a 72-hole aggregate of 22 under 266 to win for the 7th time on the PGA Tour. After a subpar Ryder Cup, Morikawa took stock of his game and asked himself this question: how am I going to get out of this? And so at that time, he hired a new physio team to help him add 10 pounds of something. He said, some muscle. I'm not going to say 10 pounds of muscle, but when he started the season with a missed cut in Hawaii, he wondered, did I just waste 2.5 months? I think I've been trying to make golf so perfect, trying to hit these shots and trying to make these putts in a certain way, that maybe others are doing that and you forget how to play the game of golf, Morikawa said. We're really artists at heart, and I've gone away from that a little bit, but not at Pebble's iconic par 3 7th hole on Sunday. Morikawa pulled out a 9-iron, looked at his caddy Mark, who nodded in agreement. It's all feel, and that's that artistry. I think that a lot of time people lose that over time, Morikawa said. He surged into contention on Saturday, hitting all 18 greens in regulation, pouring in 11 birdies and shooting 10 under 62. How good was Morikawa's ball striking? He gained 6.472 strokes on the field in approach shots, the best strokes gained, approach number in AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am history, and the second best in the ShotLink era. Now, during a final round when 9 different golfers were within 2 strokes of the lead as the leaders headed to the back 9, Morikawa made 4 birdies and 1 bogey coming home, including birdies at 3 of the last 4 holes. But he made a bogey at 17 to drop back into a tie with Lee, who shot 65 at 20 under. Morikawa could have been deflated, but he was not. He still believed. When he was waiting behind the 18th green to congratulate his friend Russell Henley, who had chipped in at the Arnold Palmer Invitational 11 months ago to edge Morikawa by a shot, Henley expressed confidence that Morikawa would get the job done. He's got a 4-iron. That's his club, Henley said. Then added Straka. He eagled the last hole to tie for second and played alongside Morikawa in the final threesome. He's one of the best iron players out of our generation, probably. He likes to cut it so that it makes it even harder with that wind blowing 25 to 30 off your left. Yeah, that's a pretty special shot to put it away there. These are the moments that Morikawa lives for, and he said that after he made that bogey at the 5th, he thought to himself, man, I love being in this position. And then he went about proving that the artist has always been in him. It was just waiting to re-emerge.
The NBA All-Star Game found its savior in Wemby. The savior of the NBA All-Star Game wasn't Adam Silver, or whichever league exec came up with the revised USA versus World format, or even the format itself. It was a 7'4" French phenom who, through stubborn persistence, forced the hands of the world's best basketball players to give more. Victor Wembanyama swatted the opening tip-off to teammate Jamal Murray and sprinted until he got underneath the rim. He sealed off Cade Cunningham and begged for the ball. Murray whipped a pass past that Wembanyama seemingly in one single motion caught on the ascent on the rim before flushing it in a forceful dunk. It took 6 seconds to alter the course of the NBA All-Star Game. He set the tone, man, and it woke me up. Timberwolves guard Anthony Edwards, the eventual All-Star MVP, told reporters after the event. That's for sure. After Silver, the NBA commissioner and the league overall faced repeated criticism over insipid All-Star games that desperately lack competitive play, Wembanyama's competitive spirit saved the event this year, with the potential to carry it beyond. Wembanyama just turned 22 and made his second All-Star appearance in his 3rd season. Undeniably one of the elite players of the world, Wembanyama is about to become a fixture. The fixture? The fixture in all NBA All-Star games. And he proved February 15th that, with him in the sort of competition, the All-Star game may be just sustainable after all. To be sure, the format does deserve some credit. Creating the 4 12-minute games essentially compress play, converting each game into its own fourth quarter, elevating the stakes in the final minutes. Tapping into a national pride did appear to motivate players, but several said before and after the All-Star game, that they missed the East versus West structure as well. All month long, Wembanyama had been saying that he wanted to lead the charge in forcing the world's best basketball players compete with organic intensity of the All-Star game. It became a point of pride. Concerning his comments Saturday when asked how specifically he planned to will his competitive vision onto other players, he said, I think exclamation point playing in a solid manner and sharing the ball with energy. If you share that energy, people feel like they have a responsibility to share it back to you. I'm confident that's the way it's going. Like Kobe Bryant before him, Wembanyama is bearing the standard, being the one outlier to demand more from his contemporaries. Consider this, as Wembanyama was setting the tone 6 seconds into the event, Cavaliers guard Donovan Mitchell and his team stripes teammates were staying warm in an auxiliary gym in the Inuit Dome, awaiting the winner of the first game. Naturally, the All-Star game was playing on a flat screen in the Orr corner, but even then, Wembanyama's reputation preceded more than his play did. I'm not going to lie, I was working out when they were playing, so I really wasn't watching much of it, Mitchell said, but I already knew just from last year, being on his All-Star team, that he's going to come out and set that tone.
And you're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on our Niagara Frontier radio reading service. Our time now is 1:30. I'm going to take you to lifestyles. We're going to start out with music news and views. Diana Ross kicks off a tour with supreme elegance and hits. Can we all agree that Diana Ross is just the definition of indefatigable? You know, I'm 81, right? She says playfully. She asks the audience while she juts her hip out during Upside Down. That's her frothy 1980 disco jam that was resurrected by Netflix's show Stranger Things. Now, at the first of her 3 shows at the Cozy Encore Theater at Wynn, Las Vegas, February 12th, Ross spent about 90 minutes just regaling a generation-spanning crowd with some of her most recognizable songs in history, with the sequins, with the floor-length taffeta capes, and a gleaming smile that is as inviting as her sing-alongs. While the Vegas concerts are technically the start of her Diana in Motion tour, which will play more than a dozen shows around the country, Ross and Las Vegas have been intertwined for decades. She finalized her career with the Supremes back in 1970 with a show that is at the now demolished Frontier Hotel, and her first solo performance took place 2 years later at Caesars Palace. But somewhat unbelievably, Ross didn't establish a Vegas residency until the year 2015, and that was at the Venetian. The Encore Theater has been her Vegas home since 2017, and she and her slick 6-piece band and 2 backup singers, they glide through the show with precision that appears effortless. The video that opens the show, it provides a solid recap of Ross's astounding career, one that includes 18 #1 hits, a 2016 Presidential Medal of Freedom, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame credentials as a member of the Supremes, and one of the most dramatic Super Bowl halftime performances from 1996. So, does Ross sing Supreme's songs? She crammed many segments of beloved songs into her set. From the opening of I'm Coming Out, and she performed it in a canary yellow gown with cloud-like sleeves, to the Bee Gees' penned Chain Reaction, to the disco-tastic song Love Hangover. Now, frequently flipping her signature hairstyle, waving her arms, and shimmying from her waist, Ross seemed to relish singing a medley of Supreme's classics like Baby Love, Come See About Me, and of course, the loving You Can't Hurry Love. Ross led the crowd also in a moment of reflection. She asked her fans to repeat the words that said, I am so grateful for all the blessings in my life because there are many. All is well. Thank you, thank you. Now, a standout moment arrived with Endless Love as amber lighting blanketed the stage and Ross, with no duet partner a la Lionel Richie, she made contact with fans in the front row as she sang to those fans and not at those fans. Likewise, the theme from Mahogany, which was executed with a lovely flute and a slight tempo change to the lyrics and still emphasized the song's pensiveness. Then the show closed with the frequent double-shot finale of the majestic sing-along Ain't No Mountain High Enough and a cover of Gloria Gaynor's I Will Survive, allowing Ross to put an exclamation point right on the night. In case validation was required, whether dazzling on New Year's Rockin' Eve with a performance that spotlighted her enduring spunkiness or turning heads with her eye-popping fashion statement at last year's Met Gala, Ross, she never goes out of style.
The fans of Wuthering Heights should brace for changes. There's some spoiler alerts in here. You can get some plot details on this movie here. Get ready for the wrath of readers. Emerald Fennell's Wuthering Heights, while steamy and visually alluring, makes major changes for Emily Bronte's classic novel. It's likely to ruffle feathers, especially for those who sprinted to read the book before they saw the movie in theaters now. Bronte's story is about revenge, obsessive love, and social class. But Fennell's adaptation with eye-catching costumes that give Alice in Wonderland absurdity more than period piece promotes Cathy and Heathcliff as the greatest love story of all time. For fans of the book, the movie may feel like Fennell found out about the plot of Wuthering Heights from a game of telephone. Here's the biggest changes from the book to the movie. The movie focuses only on the beginning of Emily Bronte's book. Like the book, Fennell's Wuthering Heights begins when Heathcliff and Cathy are children playing in the moors. But the movie ends when Cathy dies, distraught and brokenhearted over Heathcliff, having starved herself during her pregnancy. In the book, Cathy dies in chapter 16 out of 34. Almost half of the book occurs after she dies, exploring Heathcliff's vengeful mission to take ownership of the two properties, Thrushcross Grange and Wuthering Heights. And as Cathy's ghost haunts Heathcliff, the story continues with a second generation. Cathy's daughter, also named Catherine, and Heathcliff's son, Linton. It's dizzying enough to need a family tree, and everybody is getting with everybody's cousin. In the book, Cathy and Heathcliff's story is told through Nellie, the housekeeper who regales a new tenant, Mr. Lockwood, with stories of his mysterious landlord, Heathcliff. The movie also ages up characters, with Margot Robbie, 35, playing Cathy, and Jacob Elordi at 28 as his Heathcliff. In the book, Cathy is a teenager at the time of her death. In an interview with USA Today, Robbie defended Fennell's casting decision. Cathy's in her mid-20s to early 30s, which puts much more pressure on the marriage situation, Robbie says. A bunch of people telling an 18-year-old, oh, with an expletive, you better hurry up and get married, that doesn't really hold the same weight to a modern-day audience member. Elordi's casting is another big change from the book. From the time of the casting announcement dropped, fans quickly pointed out that Elordi, who is white, is playing a character pointedly described as a dark-skinned. He's also referred to as a Lascar, a term historically used for Indian and Southeast Asian sailors. When Nellie comforts him, she theorizes he could be the son of an emperor of China and an Indian queen. It's important context for why Cathy felt she could not be with Heathcliff. Though she describes him as her other half, she also said it would degrade her to marry him, and that being with Linton instead would help her move up the social ladder. The movie changes or removes key characters from the book. The movie acts as a character who plays a crucial role in the book. Hindley Earnshaw, Cathy's brother, when Mr. Earnshaw comes home with Heathcliff, he immediately begins treating him as more of a son than his own. This sets up a rivalry between Hindley and Heathcliff that will persist until Hindley's death. The movie has no brother character at all, instead authoring Heathcliff as a companion to a lonely Cathy. But rather than Mr. Earnshaw loving Heathcliff and becoming a father to him, Fennell's Earnshaw is cruel and abusive to both children, especially Heathcliff. In the movie, it's Earnshaw, not Hindley, who descends into gambling and drunken madness. It also gives movie Cathy a healthy helping of daddy issues. Fennell's version also specifies that Isabel Linton is a ward of Edgar Linton, not his sister. The term is also seen in season 4 of Bridgerton and refers to a child or dependent who is also placed in the care of a noble family given the requisite health, wealth, and education. In the movie, Cathy and Heathcliff have a full-blown love affair. Wuthering Heights may have lots of yearning, but there's nothing particularly steamy about the book. There isn't even much romance, save one passionate embracing kiss as Cathy is nearing her end. But the movie is teeming with sensual and erotic moments. From the opening scene of a horned-up crowd and hanging to a Heathcliff lifting Cathy with just one arm. In the movie, Cathy discovers her sexuality while watching two household staff members engage in BDSM with horse bridles. What differs most from the book is that Cathy and Heathcliff have a full-blown affair, hooking up in carriages and on the moors, hiding from her husband. Heathcliff even threatens to murder Linton if it means he can be with Cathy forever. In the book, Heathcliff and Cathy's passion is much more missed opportunity and frustration than explicit passion. The ending and Cathy's pregnancy. Don't expect to see Heathcliff's vengeful warpath or future generations mingling and marrying. Fennel's Wuthering Heights ends with Kathy dies after a miscarriage. In the book, she gives birth to it. Her and Edgar's daughter and just before she dies. In both versions, however, her demise is self-induced. Refusing to leave her bed or eat, she regrets her decision to cast aside Heathcliff so much that it'll cost her life.
Life lessons come into play for the stars of the movie Crime 101. There's a line by Chris Hemsworth's character in this new heist thriller called Crime 101, where he says, "There comes a moment when you realize you don't have as much time as you thought you had." While promoting the film alongside the co-stars Hemsworth and Mark Ruffalo, Halle Berry reveals that she had one of these moments in real life. "I was just in a car accident recently, and I got hit on the head," she said. "I might have been knocked out for maybe a split second, and when I came to, I saw the smoke and the airbags, and it was the moment I thought, oh my gosh, my kids could have been getting a phone call. That accident really inspired me to be more mindful because I experienced something that was so scary. It lets me know how quick it can all be over." Berry has just announced her engagement to her longtime partner Van Hunt, says she was not driving and it was a blessing that everyone was able to walk away. For Hemsworth, who's 42, the shift in his perspective occurred while working on the documentary called A Road to Remember. The actor's father, Craig, had been diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and Hemsworth discovered that he also has a heightened risk for that disease. Hemsworth also notes that his 3 kids, India, who's 13, and his twins, Sasha and Tristan, 11, have affected his career choices as they have gotten older. The movie Crime 101 found stars who took characters' plights personally. In Crime 101, Barry plays Sharon Coombs, who's a disillusioned insurance broker whose stagnant career tempts her to team with Mike Davis, an elusive jewel thief who is eyeing a big score after pulling off a string of heists along U.S. Route 101 in California. Detective Lou attempts to close in on the thief's trail, despite losing the confidence of his colleagues and dealing with a failing relationship at home. "My character is my real-life struggle," Barry just says with a laugh. Now, Hemsworth also found familiar ground with his role. His character was raised by a foster family. "My dad had a career in child protection as a sort of social worker," he said, "and I was always made aware, just through the work that he was doing, what neglect and trauma does to an individual in the formative years." Then for Ruffalo, he admired what his character stood for. He just can't let go of the truth, or what he believes is the truth for, status quo, or to get along for comfortability, Ruffalo says as a detective. He became a cop to expose the truth and get to the heart of the matter. So, who wins Crime 101 or The Avengers? The Crime 101 ensemble also includes Irish actor Barry Keoghan. All 4 actors have suited up for superhero movies. Ruffalo, Hemsworth, Keoghan appeared in Marvel Cinematic Universe as Hulk, Thor, and Druig, respectively. Then, as for Halle Berry, she portrayed Storm in 4 of the X-Men films. So who would win in a battle between the superheroes and these Crime 101 characters? Hemsworth seems to like the chances for Thor, Hulk, and Storm against the jewel thief, detective, and insurance broker in Crime 101, noting that Marvel villain Thanos, who eventually met his demise, was quite the thief. "We would have done it a lot quicker if we had Storm," Hemsworth adds, of defeating Thanos. "It took us 2 movies. We would have only taken 1 if Halle Berry were involved. That would have saved $500 million, Ruffalo jokes, before shooting a proposal to Berry, who nods approvingly. "They should just give you $500 million right now to just do the next one," he says.
Dolan says, "Being the last monkey and choked me up." Mickey Dolenz knows you don't want a new version of The Last Train to Clarksville. The monkey's star gets you just want the original because that's what he wants too. "I was a huge Everly Brothers fan. They were my monkeys," said Dolenz. He recalls sitting 8th row center at the duo's 1983 reunion concert at Royal Albert Hall, hoping Phil and Don would sing his favorites. "I'd been to some very disappointing shows where the headliner doesn't do anything except maybe one big hit. The other Everly Brothers played their hits, and as Dolan sang along on Wake Up Little Susie and Kathy's Clown, he thought, if I ever do go back and I'm asked to sing the monkey songs, I'm going to make sure I sing every one in their entirety. No medleys, no screwing around. I'm stuck with that, and including arrangements and opening licks and hooks. At 80 years old, he's the last monkey here to absorb the outpouring of love from fans as a made-for-TV group turns 60. Davy Jones, the band's baby-faced percussion shaking frontman died in 2012 at just 66, sending shockwaves through the Monkees' once preteen admirers. Bass and keyboard players Peter Tork at 77 and guitarist-songwriter Michael Nesmith at 78 died in 2019 and 2021 respectively. The anniversary is being celebrated with Rhino just released The A's and B's of the Monkees, a new compilation of their singles released between 66 and 70, and Dolenz' 60 Years of the Monkees tour, which launched February 12th in California. A stop in LA on September 12th marks the 1966 premiere date of the innovative NBC sitcom, and Dolenz promises its storytelling and a chronological performance of the hits. A Monkees Eras tour, if you will. All the music is always there. That's the meat and potatoes, he says. This time it's going to be a lot of video talking about the genesis and the genetics of the show. He acknowledges it can be emotional being the only monkey on stage. Of course, I went through the whole grieving thing, but in some ways they never left. Every time I do a show, they're there, Dolenz says. If he catches a video glimpse in his bandmates during a performance, he can still kind of choke me up. Dolenz remains both pragmatic and romantic about the group and its legacy. For years, I've tried to clear up the misconception that the Monkees was a band. It wasn't. It was a musical comedy sitcom, he says. And he says he had no issue with being cast as the drummer. At the time, he wasn't one. So Dolenz is the voice of the bulk of the band's hits. It wasn't the music he was listening to at the time. I was not a 10-year-old girl or boy. I was a humongous Beatles fan. I was a fan of the Animals, the Stones, Otis Redding, he says. I was a bluesy rocker kind of guy. Yet to this day, I love singing them, he says of the Monkees tunes, such as I'm a Believer and Pleasant Valley Sunday. I've learned to appreciate what makes a really good song. I would wonder, why do I still love this song? Because it was expletive, written by Carole King and Neil Diamond and Boyce and Hart and Harry Nilsson and Paul Williams and David Gates. He shrugs off the Monkees' continued exclusion from Rock and Roll Hall of Fame despite the band's commercial success, cultural impact, and longevity. Could it ever happen, maybe in the musical influence category? It started out as a private country club, he said, of the Rock Hall's launch, which coincided with the Monkees' improbable 80s MTV rebirth. And like a private country club, they're allowed to have anybody in that they want and not have anybody in that they don't want. At this point, I just don't know. It isn't on my radar that desperately. He's proud of the Monkees' two 1967 Emmys for Outstanding Comedy Series and a Comedy Director. To me, it doesn't get better than that. Though Tork and Nesmith often were visibly chafed, Dolenz says he's never been unhappy with being a monkey. Well, there were times when I did not like being famous and a celebrity and being harassed and followed and sued and threatened, he says, laughing. There are times I'll be in a restaurant to this day and someone yells at me across the room, "Hey, monkey, come here, sign my wife's napkin." He's happy performing and recording. 2021's Dolenz Sings Nesmith was produced by Christian Nesmith, Mike's son. And he says we'll never get off the road, though he's being more selective these days. It's 24 hours of commuting for a 2-hour gig, essentially. I hate the travel, but they pay me to travel. I sing for free. When I came to that realization, it made easier to amortize. The show is the easy part. That's why they call it playing. The fandom longs for more. People call me all the time. There should be a monkey movie. There should be a documentary, Dolenz says, though the quartet has had absolutely no ownership of the brand. Still, I'm incredibly appreciative to have been a part of it, he says. It's given me a great frigging life.
Savannah Guthrie opens up about her missing mother. The Today anchor shares pleas in her new video. Savannah Guthrie is again speaking out about her mother's possible kidnapping after authorities released more details in Nancy Guthrie's case. In a new video shared by the Today anchor, she said, "It's been 2 weeks since our mom was taken, and I just wanted to come home and say that we still have hope and we still believe. I wanted to say to whoever has her or knows where she is that it's not too late. It's never too late," says Savannah Guthrie, who's 54. "You're not lost or alone, and it is never too late to do the right thing, and we're here." Now, Nancy Guthrie, who's 84, has not been seen since January 31st, and the Pima County Sheriff's Department has said it believes she was taken from her home outside Tucson, Arizona. The family's hour of desperation. The Guthrie family has posted several videos on social media over the past 2 weeks addressing Savannah Guthrie's followers and whoever may have abducted Nancy Guthrie. On February 12th, Savannah Guthrie shared a home video of her mother and her sister Annie, as well as a family photo of her siblings as children. The family then began posting messages after several media outlets reported receiving purported ransom notes making demands of the family, which have not been verified. Now, according to the FBI, one ransom note was sent to the media, included a deadline of February 5th, and then a second one of February 9th. On February 9th, the day of the second deadline, Savannah Guthrie posted a video on Instagram saying her family was in an hour of desperation. She urged followers to help in the search for her mother by reporting anything suspicious that they might have seen. "We believe our mom is still out there," she said. "We need your help. Law enforcement is working tirelessly around the clock trying to bring her home. She was taken and we don't know where." The Today Show host did not directly address the ransom notes in her February 9th video. 2 days earlier, she shared a separate video speaking directly to whoever took her mother. "We received your message and we understand," she said, sitting next to her brother. "We beg you now to return our mother to us so we can celebrate with her. This is the only way we'll have peace. This is very valuable to us and we will pay." Authorities tap into tech. In an interview on February 16th on Today, Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos said as authorities chased several leads and ran DNA evidence from gloves that were found on the Guthrie property, that his team was getting closer to a break. "We think we're getting there," he said. "We think we're getting closer." Authorities are working with Google and some other tech companies to track down any footage of Guthrie's abductor. As local and federal authorities have scoured Guthrie's property and nearby areas for evidence, investigators are drawing on physical, digital, and biological tools. Authorities reportedly have used a device that's called a signal sniffer. It's mounted on a law enforcement helicopter in an attempt to detect Nancy Guthrie's pacemaker signal. Now, that's according to reports from Fox News and News Nation. The outlets reported that the device was attached to a sheriff's department helicopter that was seen flying low over the Tucson area on February 3rd. Now, Kevin Smith, who's a spokesperson for the FBI's Phoenix field office, declined to comment on whether investigators were using that device. Gloves, they appear to match the footage. On February 15th, the FBI confirmed to USA Today that gloves that appear to match the gloves on the subject that is in the surveillance video, they were found about 2 miles away from Guthrie's home in a field that was near the side of the road, and then they were sent to a lab for testing. These gloves were sent to a private lab, and the FBI received preliminary results, but it was awaiting quality control and official confirmation before putting unknown male profile into its database. Now, in comments on Today, journalist Tom Winter, he said that the National DNA Database consists of people who have been arrested or convicted of crimes, which accounts for only about 6.5% to 7% of all population. The Pima County Sheriff's Department has confirmed that several gloves have been located in its investigation, the closest of which were found about 2 miles from Guthrie's home. Then the FBI later elaborated that approximately 16 gloves had been collected near the home, most of which were the searchers' gloves as they were discarded in various areas. Law enforcement has asked anyone with information to contact 1-800-CALL-FBI or tips.fbi.gov. The Pima County Sheriff's Department, which is 520-351-4900, or 88 Crime. The FBI is offering a $100,000 reward for information leading to Guthrie's return or the arrest or conviction of anybody who is responsible for her disappearance.
And here's the Lifeline column. "I've always been very love-oriented and I've always been looking for my person. I met Jack," Margaret Qualley said of her husband, Jack Antonoff, in a recent interview with Vanity Fair. The producer, known for his work with Taylor Swift, and as the frontman of Bleachers, met the Substance actress in 2021 at a party. They wed 2 years later at a star-studded ceremony on the New Jersey shoreline. Qualley was the daughter of actress Andy McDowell, affirmed that she and Antonoff planned to have kids, but quipped in response to a question about having names picked out, "If I did, I wouldn't talk about it." It's your birthday. Who's celebrating today? Actor Rene Russo is 72. Actor Lou Diamond Phillips, 64. Director Michael Bay is 61. Actor Denise Richards is 55. Singer-guitarist Billy Joe Armstrong of Green Day is 54. Actor Jerry O'Connell is 52. Actor Joseph Gordon-Levitt, 45. TV personality Paris Hilton is 45. Actor-singer Cord Overstreet, 37. Singer Ed Sheeran is 35. Actor Bonnie Wright is 35. And actor Jeremy Allen White is 35. Your horoscopes. Aries, reaching an epiphany. Today's solar eclipse in Aquarius may redirect your energy to a new project or a dream. Taurus, your professional path is in a state of reinvention. An unexpected opportunity or disruption pushes you into new territory. Gemini, a subconscious fear may shake loose today. Is something that was once stuck beginning to lift? Cancer, unlock your dreams by dislodging a fixed viewpoint. Are you seeing the holes in your previous operating system? Leo, a big life decision may strike you out of the blue. Where does that leave your partnerships and commitments? Virgo, expect a disruption to your everyday reality. The Aquarius solar eclipse breaks patterns to make room for expansion. Libra, are fears holding you back from creativity or romance? The Aquarius solar eclipse has come to break down that wall. Scorpio, partnerships may be full of surprises. Are the changes in someone else's life affecting you at your core? Sagittarius, leveling up your skill set, your work may be shifting, which requires you to learn new things. Keep an open mind. Capricorn, a creative breakthrough may be a catalyst for value shift. Suddenly realizing that play deserves to be a priority. Aquarius, a new you is calling. Will you pick up? Pisces, a sudden mental breakdown may shock your perception today. Free your mind. Well, you've been listening to a reading of USA Today for Tuesday, February 17th, 2026. We read USA Today weekdays at noon. For more information, call 821-5555. And your readers today have been
Jody
and Alan Blackburn.
You're listening to your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Our volunteer radio readers broadcast daily readings of newspapers, magazines, and books. For nearly 40 years, radio reading has served people who are blind or have a print disability throughout western New York and southern Ontario's Niagara Peninsula. Our broadcast signal is provided at no charge by WNED. Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service studios are located at 1199 Harlem Road. Please spread the word about your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. For more information, call 716-821-5555. If you or people you know shop at any of the Dash's supermarkets, please save Dash's register tapes for radio reading. Our agency receives $2 for every $100 in Dash's register tapes. Radio reading has raised thousands of dollars so far. Anyone can drop off their Dash's tapes to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, between William and Clinton Streets. Or Dash's tapes can be mailed to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, New York, 14227. Any questions on Dash's tapes for radio reading? Call us at 716-821-5555, and thanks for caring. following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision,